Some serious security concerns over the newly released JFK files and real anger after Social Security numbers and other private information of more than 200 people were made public on Tuesday. The Washington Post reports that among them are former congressional staffers and one of Donald Trump's most vocal defenders, his former campaign lawyer, Joseph diGenova. He is furious, telling the Post it's absolutely outrageous, adding, "It's like a first-grade elementary level rule of security to redact things like that." And it happened because the president announced the release without warning. As the New York Times reports, some of the country's top national security officials had spent hours trying to assess any possible hazards under extreme deadline pressure. Some officials raised concerns about unintended consequences of rushing the release of the files. They were released anyway. Joining us now is Charlie Sykes, MSNBC contributor and columnist. Jonathan Capehart is an MSNBC host, associate editor of The Washington Post, Pulitzer Prize-winning journal, and author of the upcoming book, Yet Here I Am, Lessons from a Black Man's Search for Home. Jonathan, besides the fact that I have to say great picture on the cover, look, flags, red flags were waved and reportedly ignored. What does this decision say?
I think Mr. diGenova has it right. I mean, this is amateur hour. This is not how things are supposed to be done. Some of the most sensitive information that there can be for an individual out there for the public to see. And as he says in the Washington Post story, you know, he has had death threats. He is now open to identity theft. Anyone whose private information is out there. Why release the JFK files unless you are part of or believe in the conspiracy theories about the late president's death? And to release these files without doing the work of redacting the sensitive information, but also going through and seeing what national security issues might be there for the unintended consequences you mentioned, just shows seemingly a cavalier attitude towards the information that was actually released.
Charlie, Jonathan's paper, The Post, talked to an intelligence expert who said this: someone dropped the ball. I hope they weren't as sloppy in the JFK files with covert agents and assets overseas. Should it be obvious to everyone why you don't rush this?
It ought to be, and I think that I agree with everything that Jonathan said, and the real concern ought to be the pattern and practice that we're seeing from this administration, which was not only cavalier and sloppy in the release of this document, but throughout the government, where we're seeing this rush to follow Donald Trump's sometimes erratic impulses to shut things down, to release things. And there's been a cavalier attitude towards privacy and civil liberties really across the board. And so I think there ought to be real concern, especially as we see at the amateur hour moving into very sensitive Social Security information, IRS information. Will we see greater care? Or is this going to be a pattern where the administration just demands, the instant release or the release of information and the consequences be damned? I mean, any time that you have, a 19-year-old named Big Balls who is playing a major role in shutting down the federal government, how much confidence can we be that they are actually taking the time to prudently and carefully look at the information that they are releasing or making available?
Jonathan, another thing that Joe diGenova told the Post is that the government should pay to help protect those who had that personal information released. Companies do that, right, with credit score agencies after a data breach. Can you see the White House doing that, which I guess would essentially mean publicly admitting that they made a mistake?
Yeah, I don't see it happening, and if it does, I will be glad to have been proven wrong. But maybe Mr. diGenova, given his close relationship with the president, can appeal for himself, and maybe they will pay for his. But absolutely, the federal government should pay to protect the information of the people, or at least help themselves protect themselves from whatever nefarious things could happen, since their personal information is out there. And another thing with DOJ, we've been seeing stories for weeks now about how those personnel have been going in and accessing the most sensitive information that the country has and that we as Americans have, and we have no idea what they're going to do with that information. That, I think, is the next shoe to drop.
Well, you know, the other thing, Charlie, is this is hardly the first example of the risks of the Trump administration moving too fast. I mean, even if you just consider how many things they've done that they then had to undo, big and small, whether it's firing lots of people and then having to bring them back to the office or taking things down from a website and having to put them back up. But is this maybe a big enough warning that they might learn from?
Well, they've proven unwilling to learn from many other mistakes in the past, but in this particular case, you cannot unring a bell. Once this information is out, it is out, and there's not much that they can do about it. And I think that what you're seeing is the speed and the volume of the things that they're doing mean that more things like this are going to continue to happen. And to Jonathan's point, the federal government has vast troves of very, very sensitive information that Americans were assured was going to be protected and kept confidential, whether it's IRS information, Social Security information, child support information. I mean, the list is extremely long. And yet, right now, what are the guarantees that American citizens can have that somebody who is utterly unqualified will, in fact, misuse that information, release that information, have that information transferred into hands of people who do not have it? And what are the recourses? Right now, what is the accountability for the people who are doing this and behaving this way? And so I do think that red flares and alarms should be going up.
Charlie Sykes, Jonathan Capehart, guys, thanks so much for coming on. Well.